I gave my husband everything in the divorce. The house, the cars, the company, every last dollar we had built over 8 years. And when the judge asked if I was absolutely sure, I smiled and said, "Yes, I want him to have it all." My lawyer looked at me like I had just destroyed my own life. My mother-in-law actually smirked, and the woman sitting in the front row, my husband's 27-year-old mistress, she pulled out her phone and took a selfie, because in their eyes, this was the moment I lost everything. But here's what none of them knew. 47 seconds after my husband signed those papers, his entire world collapsed. Not slowly, not quietly, but all at once, right there in that courtroom. And the man who thought he had just won everything realized he had just signed away his future instead. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated so badly that people thought you were too weak to fight back? What if I told you? Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to say nothing at all. If you enjoy stories like this, stories where the truth takes its time, but always comes back, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way, if life pulls you away, you can always come back and finish the story, or find another one that reminds you just how powerful patience can be. Because what I'm about to tell you is not just a story about divorce. It's about silence, it's about strategy, and it's about the moment someone finally realizes they were never in control to begin with. And trust me, what happened next is something no one in that courtroom saw coming. 8 years. That's how long I was married to Vincent Saunders. And if you had met us back then, you would have said we had the perfect life. We lived in a 5-bedroom colonial house just outside Houston, the kind with tall white columns, a wide front porch, and neighbors who waved like everything was exactly as it should be. Vincent drove a Porsche Cayenne. I drove an old Honda Accord that I kept telling myself I'd replace next year. We hosted dinners. We smiled in photos. We looked successful. But here's the thing about perfect lives. They only look real from the outside. Inside that house, everything belonged to Vincent. Not just the business, not just the money, everything. I'll handle the finances, he told me on our honeymoon. You handle the home. It's simpler that way. And I believed him, because I had grown up watching my parents tear each other apart over money, and I thought silence meant peace. Back then, I was a senior accountant. I understood numbers. I understood risk, but I didn't understand what it meant to slowly disappear inside your own life. When I got pregnant with our son Tyler, Vincent didn't ask me what I wanted. He told me, "The baby needs you at home. I'll take care of everything." And just like that, I quit my job. At first, it felt like a choice. Then it became a pattern. The credit cards were in his name. The accounts were in his name. Even the mail stopped coming to me. If I needed something, I asked, and Vincent decided. Over time, I stopped asking. Not because I didn't need things, but because I already knew the answer. Tyler changed everything for me. The moment I held him, I felt something I had never felt before. Not fear, not doubt, just responsibility. The kind that keeps you awake at night, wondering if you're doing enough. But Vincent saw Tyler differently. To him, our son wasn't a relationship. He was a legacy. Something to mention at business dinners. Something to show off, but never truly show up for. Vincent missed Tyler's first steps, missed his first word, missed every school event, every bedtime story. At first I made excuses. He's busy. He's building a future for us. That's what I told myself. Until one night, I couldn't anymore. Tyler had been sitting by the window for over 2 hours, his favorite book clutched in his hands. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming home?" I checked my phone. No messages, no calls. He said he'd read to me tonight. I texted Vincent. Nothing. Called him. Voicemail. Eventually, Tyler fell asleep on the couch, still holding that book. When Vincent finally walked in, it was almost 11. He smelled different, not like work, not like home, something unfamiliar. "You forgot," I said quietly. He didn't even look up from his phone. "I'm building a future for this family, Diana. Tyler will understand when he's older." But the next morning, when my son realized his father had come home and never even said goodnight, I saw something change in his eyes. And in that moment, something changed in me too. Because I realized this wasn't temporary. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a phase. This was who Vincent really was. A man who believed providing money was the same as being present. A man who thought love could be replaced with control. And maybe the hardest truth of all was that I had allowed it. I had stayed quiet. I had avoided conflict. I had convinced myself that keeping the peace was the same as protecting my family. But peace without respect is just silence. And silence can hide a lot of things: secrets, lies, and sometimes the beginning of something much worse. Because what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have imagined at the time, was that behind Vincent's locked office door, behind the expensive suits, the confident smile, the life everyone envied, there was something waiting for me, something that would change everything I thought I knew about my husband, about my marriage, and about the man I had trusted with my entire life. The night everything changed, I wasn't looking for the truth. I was just looking for a passport. Tyler had a school field trip coming up, and for some reason, I can't even remember now, he needed it. Vincent kept all our important documents in his home office, a room that was usually locked. But that night, he forgot. I remember standing outside that door for a moment, my hand resting on the handle, feeling something I couldn't quite explain. Not fear, just hesitation. Then I opened it. The passport was exactly where he said it would be. Top drawer, neatly filed. But as I pulled it out, my hand brushed against something else. A folder, thick, heavy, out of place. I almost ignored it. Almost. But then I saw the stamp on the envelope. Final notice. Something inside me shifted. Not panic, not yet. Just curiosity. The kind that comes from years of working with numbers when something doesn't add up. I opened the first letter, 90 days past due. $340,000. I blinked, thinking I had read it wrong. Then I opened another and another. Different banks, different accounts. Same message: delinquent, overdue, immediate action required. By the time I reached the bottom of that drawer, my hands weren't shaking from fear. They were steady, too steady, because suddenly everything made sense. The late nights, the constant investor meetings, the expensive suits charged to cards I never saw. It wasn't success. It was debt. Massive, growing, uncontrollable debt. Over $2 million, maybe more. And Vincent had never said a word. I sat there in his chair, surrounded by documents that felt less like paperwork and more like evidence. Because that's what it was. Evidence of a life built on lies. For a moment, I just stared at it all. 8 years of marriage, reduced to numbers on a page. And then, I did something that surprised even me. I didn't cry. I didn't call him. I didn't confront anything. Instead, I reached for my phone, and I took pictures. Every document, every page, every signature. Clear, focused, careful. Like I was documenting a crime scene. Then I put everything back exactly where I found it. Closed the drawer, turned off the light, and walked out. That night, I didn't sleep. But it wasn't because I was afraid. It was because I was thinking, calculating. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to Vincent's decisions. I was making my own. The next morning, I made a call to the only person who had ever looked at my life and quietly questioned it. Rachel, my college roommate. She worked at a bank now. The kind of person who didn't panic, who didn't jump to conclusions. "Can you help me run a credit check?" I asked. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Come in tomorrow." What I learned over the next few weeks was worse than I expected, but also strangely reassuring. Most of the debt was in Vincent's name or tied to his company, but not all of it. 2 loans taken out under both of our names, with signatures I had never written. Rachel looked at me carefully. "This is fraud?" The word hung in the air between us. Heavy, real. "You could report him," she said. I shook my head. Not yet, because by then, I wasn't thinking like a wife anymore. I was thinking like someone who had finally seen the full picture. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Reporting him wouldn't fix anything. It would just start a war. I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. What I needed was time. Time to understand everything. Time to protect myself. Time to decide how this story would end. So I opened a new bank account, one Vincent didn't know about. Every month, I saved what I could. $200, sometimes $3. It wasn't much, but it wasn't about the amount. It was about control, something I hadn't had in a very long time. I kept records, every email, every statement, every suspicious transaction. I watched, I listened, I learned, and slowly, quietly, I prepared, because Vincent thought he was the only one in control. He thought I wasn't paying attention. He thought I didn't understand. And maybe that was the biggest mistake he ever made. Because while he was busy building a life he couldn't afford, I was building something he couldn't see. A way out, a plan, and a moment that would come when he least expected it. About a year after I found the truth, Vincent stopped pretending. At first, it was small things. A different scent on his shirt. Messages he silenced too quickly. Late nights that turned into overnight trips. If this had happened years earlier, I might have questioned him. I might have cried, or argued, or begged for answers. But by then, I didn't need answers anymore. I already knew. And knowing changes something. It takes the emotion out of it. Turns pain into observation. Vincent had grown careless, not because he was smarter than me, but because he thought I wasn't paying attention. That was his second mistake. The first time I saw her was at his mother's house. A family dinner, the kind I had attended for 8 years. Always sitting in the same chair. Always playing the same role. But that night, someone else was sitting in my place. She was younger, blonde, perfectly styled in a way that looked expensive, but wasn't. I noticed the details immediately. The stitching on her handbag, slightly uneven. The hardware, just a shade off. A counterfeit. It was almost ironic, because she wasn't the only fake thing in that room. "Everyone," Vincent said casually, "this is Brittany. She's been helping with some new investments." Helping. That was the word he chose. His hand rested lightly on her back, as if she already belonged there. His mother smiled, not politely, not awkwardly, but warmly, like she had been waiting for this. "Finally," she said, reaching for Brittany's hands, "someone who understands ambition." Then she looked at me, that same thin smile I had seen for years. "Diana, be a dear and help in the kitchen." Just like that, I disappeared. Again, I stood in the kitchen, listening to laughter from the dining room, listening to my husband entertain another woman in front of his family, and no one said a word. Not one person asked a question. Not one person looked uncomfortable, because to them, I was already replaceable. Tyler sat beside me that night, quiet, watching everything. "Mom," he whispered, "who is that lady?" I knelt down beside him. "She's nobody important." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't entirely true, because she wasn't the problem. She was just the symptom. The real problem was sitting at the head of the table, smiling like he had already moved on, while I was still legally his wife. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Vincent stopped hiding her. He mentioned her name casually, compared me to her, openly. "Brittany knows how to present herself," he said one evening. "Professional women understand that. I looked down at the dress I had worn for years. Simple, comfortable, invisible. And for the first time, I realized something. He didn't want a partner. He wanted an image. Someone who made him look successful, even when everything around him was falling apart. The lies were growing. The debt was growing. And now, his arrogance was growing too. He thought he had already replaced me. He thought I had nowhere to go. And slowly, the world around me began to believe it too. Friends stopped calling. Invitations stopped coming. At Tyler's school, people looked at me with quiet sympathy, the kind that assumes you've already lost. "I heard about your situation," one mother said gently. "It must be hard." Hard. That word stayed with me, because what she meant was, I had failed, as a wife, as a woman. And Vincent, he controlled the narrative. "I'm trying to be fair," he told people. "She's dragging things out, as if I was the problem, as if I was the one who had broken our family." Even his mother called me, her voice cold, precise. "Don't embarrass yourself, Diana. You were lucky to live the life my son gave you. Lucky." I let her finish. Then I said something very simple. "I haven't asked for anything." And that was the truth, because I didn't need anything from them anymore. Not validation, not approval, not even justice, because by then, I already had something much more valuable. Time. Time to watch. Time to prepare. Time to let them believe that I had already lost. And the more they believed it, the more careless they became. The more they exposed, the more they underestimated me. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The moment someone believes you are powerless is the moment they stop protecting themselves. And Vincent, he had stopped completely, which meant everything that came next was entirely his own doing. 6 months before the divorce was finalized, Vincent finally said it. "I want a divorce." No hesitation, no emotion, just 5 words, delivered like a business decision. I remember sitting across from him at the dining table, the same table where we had once talked about baby names, vacations, the future. And now, it felt like a negotiation room. "I see," I said quietly. "What are you proposing?" He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, like a man who had already won. "I'm keeping everything. The house, the cars, the company, all of it," he added almost casually. "And me," I asked. He shrugged. "You can keep Tyler." Keep. That word hit harder than anything else he had said. Not raise, not care for. Keep. Like our son was something optional. "The kid would just slow me down," he continued. "I'm being reasonable here." Reasonable. I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a man who believed he was untouchable, a man who thought he controlled everything, including how this story would end. "Are you sure?" I asked. He smiled, confident, certain. "Yes, I want it all." I nodded slowly. "Okay." That was it. No argument, no negotiation, just agreement. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in him, in me. Because what Vincent didn't understand was that I had been waiting for this. For 3 years, I had been preparing for the moment he would show his hand. And now, he finally had. The first meeting with his lawyer was exactly what I expected. A tall glass office, polished floors, expensive furniture designed to intimidate. Vincent sat beside his attorney, smiling like this was a formality, like I would walk in and immediately surrender. "She doesn't need a lawyer," he said confidently. "She wouldn't understand any of this anyway." I didn't respond. I just opened the folder they handed me, page after page of legal language, all leading to one conclusion. I would walk away with nothing. No assets, no support, just custody of Tyler. And Vincent, he would walk away with everything, exactly what he wanted. "I'll need time to review this," I said calmly. For a brief moment, he looked surprised. Then he smiled again. "Take your time," he said. "The outcome won't change." He was right. The outcome wouldn't change, but not in the way he thought. That same week, I met with my lawyer, Margaret Collins. She didn't look impressed by Vincent. She didn't look intimidated by his money or his confidence. She just listened, carefully, patiently, as I laid everything out. The debt, the fraud, the affair, 3 years of evidence, organized down to the smallest detail. When I finished, she looked at me differently, not with pity, with respect. "You've done more preparation than most clients I see," she said. "I wasn't preparing for a fight," I replied. "I was preparing for an outcome." She nodded slowly. "Then let's talk about what that outcome looks like." She explained everything. The law, the assets, the debts. And then she said something that changed everything. "If he wants all the assets, he can take all the liabilities too." I didn't say anything at first. I just let that sink in. All the properties, all the accounts, all the hidden debt, attached to every single one. How I asked. "A liability assumption clause," she said. "It means whoever takes the asset takes the debt with it." I felt something settle inside me. Not excitement, not revenge, just clarity. "And if he signs it," I asked, "then it's legally binding." I thought about Vincent, his ego, his certainty, his complete belief that he was always the smartest person in the room. "He won't read it carefully," I said. Margaret gave a small smile. "Then we don't stop him." That was the moment the plan became real. Not emotional, not reactive, strategic. We built the agreement exactly the way he wanted. Every asset transferred to him. Every demand accepted. And buried deep inside was the truth. Page 47, a single clause. That would change everything. Over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. His lawyer sent emails, threats, deadlines. Brittany even called me, her voice sweet, but impatient. "We're trying to move forward," she said. "It would really help if you didn't delay things." I almost smiled, because for the first time, they needed something from me, and they didn't even realize it. That night, I signed my part of the agreement. Every page, every line, exactly as planned. All that was left was for Vincent to do the same. And knowing him, knowing how much he believed in his own version of reality, I was certain of one thing. He wouldn't see it coming, not until it was far too late. The morning of the hearing was strangely calm, the kind of calm that doesn't come from peace, but from certainty. I dropped Tyler off at Rachel's house. He hugged me tightly before I left. "Mom, are you coming back soon?" I smiled and kissed his forehead. "Soon, baby, I promise." And for the first time in a long time, I knew that promise was something I could keep. When I arrived at the courthouse, Vincent was already there, standing outside in his navy suit, checking his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. He didn't even look nervous. Why would he? As far as he knew, this was just a formality, a signature, a final step, a victory. Inside the courtroom, everything felt smaller than I expected. Quieter, more final. Vincent sat across from me, his lawyer beside him, confident, relaxed, like a man about to collect something he believed was already his. In the front row, Brittany sat with perfect posture, dressed in red. Next to her, Evelyn, watching, waiting, ready to witness my defeat. I took my seat beside Margaret. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Everything had already been decided. The judge entered. The room stood. Then we began. The agreement was read aloud, line by line, asset by asset. The house transferred to Vincent. The cars transferred to Vincent. The company entirely his. Every word reinforcing exactly what he wanted, exactly what he had demanded. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Saunders, do you understand that you are relinquishing all rights to these assets?" "I do," I said. "And you are doing so voluntarily?" "Yes." Vincent smiled, slow, satisfied. Then the judge turned to him. "Mr. Saunders, you have been advised to seek independent financial review. Do you waive that right?" He didn't hesitate. "I built this company," he said confidently. "I know exactly what it's worth." Margaret didn't move. I didn't move. We were both waiting. "Very well," the judge said. Please proceed with signing. Vincent picked up his pen. A Mont Blanc. Of course it was. He flipped to the final pages, barely glancing at the document, and signed. One page, then another, then the last. Quick, effortless. Done. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slightly, like a man who had just closed a deal. And then, everything changed. It started with his lawyer, a subtle shift, a pause, his eyes scanning the document again, more carefully this time. Then stopping. Page 47. I watched the color drain from his face. Vincent, he said quietly. Wait. But it was already too late. What Vincent asked annoyed. What is it? His lawyer turned the document toward him, his finger pointing to a single paragraph. I saw Vincent's eyes move across the page. Once, twice, then stop. This says, he began slowly, then louder. This says, I'm responsible for the debts. No one spoke. The room felt still. All of them, Margaret said calmly. Vincent looked up, confused at first, then panicked. How much, he asked. Margaret didn't hesitate. Approximately $4.7 million. The silence broke. Brittany's voice, sharp, disbelieving. 4 million? Vincent stood up so quickly, his chair scraped across the floor. This is fraud, he shouted. She tricked me. The judge didn't raise her voice, but when she spoke, everyone listened. Mr. Saunders, you signed a waiver confirming you understood the agreement. I didn't know, he argued. You chose not to know, she replied. That is not the court's responsibility. Vincent turned to me, his face completely different now. No confidence, no control, just anger and fear. You knew, he said. I met his eyes. Calm, steady. I gave you exactly what you asked for. Nothing more, nothing less. Behind him, Brittany stood frozen. Then slowly, she stepped back. Vincent, her voice cracked. You said you were worth millions. He didn't answer, because for the first time, he couldn't. Evelyn stood next, her expression cold, controlled, but her silence said everything. Without a word, she walked out, and just like that, the man who thought he had everything had nothing left. Vincent looked around the room, as if searching for something to hold on to. But there was nothing. No support, no admiration, no illusion left, only the truth and the consequences of every choice he had made. You destroyed me, he said quietly. I shook my head. Number. I paused, just long enough for the words to land. You did that yourself. And for the first time in 8 years, I stood up and walked away without looking back. If you step back from Diana's story for a moment and look at it through a different lens, what happened in that courtroom wasn't just a divorce. It was a psychological shift. Because in relationships like this, the real damage doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, through control, through silence, through the quiet belief that one person knows better than the other. Vincent didn't lose everything because of one bad decision. He lost it because of a pattern of arrogance, of avoidance, of believing that confidence could replace truth. And Diana, she didn't win because she was lucky. She won because she paid attention, because she stopped reacting and started observing, because she understood something most people don't realize until it's too late. That power doesn't always come from speaking louder. Sometimes it comes from knowing when to stay quiet. Now, as someone who has spent years studying human behavior, relationships, and the long-term impact of emotional dynamics, I can tell you this. The most dangerous moment in any relationship is when one person starts believing the other has no options, because that's when respect disappears. And once respect is gone, everything else begins to collapse. What makes this story powerful is not the revenge, it's the restraint. Diana didn't expose Vincent. She didn't destroy his reputation. She simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. And that's a lesson many people struggle to accept. You are not responsible for saving someone from themselves. You are only responsible for protecting your own peace. And sometimes, That means stepping back and letting the truth unfold on its own. Now here's something even more important. The ending of this story wasn't the courtroom. It was what came after. A smaller home, a simpler life, a mother and son, rebuilding something real. Because healing doesn't come from watching someone fall. It comes from realizing you no longer need them to stand. So if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you felt overlooked, controlled, or underestimated, let this be a reminder. Silence is not weakness if it is chosen. Patience is not surrender if it has purpose. And the people who underestimate you are often the ones least prepared for who you become next. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, not just to support the channel, but to help this message reach someone else who might need it. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing, because there are more stories like this. Stories about truth, about consequences, and about the quiet strength it takes to walk away and rebuild. Until next time, remember this: you don't have to prove your worth to the people who refuse to see it. You just have to stop giving them the power to define it.